Outline. Introduction. The perfect fishing spots. Grandpa Joe's weekend traditions. Quiet community pond. The history of the pond and easement. Karen's rise to power. Meetings. Karen, HOA president for 8 years. Day. HOA's rules war. Her obsession with outsiders. Day. Confrontation by the pond. Grandpa Joe and his grandson Tim. Karen's fury. This is private property. The call to the police. The unexpected twist. Sheriff Arab's. Grandpa Joe's quiet reveal. Karen's smug grin. Unraveling the easement. The land survey that changed everything. Grandpa Joe's property. Lineth $2 million easement that the HOA needs. Stay lawsuit. Karen's meltdown. HOA board's panic. Grandpa Joe's lawyer steps in. Courtroom showdown. Testimonies and evidence. The historical deed. Final judgment. Karen's downfall. HOA's debt spiral. Residents revolt. Karen forced to resign. Grandpa Joe's legacy. The pond returns to the neighborhood. A new fishing dock. A community reborn. Epilogue. Karma at the pond. Karen's abandoned house. Grandpa Joe's lesson for Tim. Sign that says, "Everyone welcome." It was a Saturday morning when Grandpa Joe pulled up in his old, rusty pickup truck, the kind that squeaked every time it turned down the gravel road to Lakeview Estates. Riding shotgun was Tim, his 12-year-old grandson, with a tackle box in his lap and a wide grin on his face. Fishing was their thing, the one quiet place where they could talk about anything or nothing at all. The community pond wasn't big. Just a few acres of clear, sparkling water surrounded by willows and cattails. It sat at the edge of the subdivision, right next to the walking path that meandered behind several homes, including the biggest one, Karen's. Karen wasn't her real name, her name was actually Patricia Hansen, but everyone called her Karen because she was the embodiment of HOA tyranny. She had been president of the Lakeview Estates HOA for almost a decade. In those years, she had fined families for toys left on porches, threatened lawsuits over mailbox paint colors, and even tried to ban kids from playing ball in the cul-de-sac. But the pond, Grandpa Joe thought that was different. Years ago, when Joe bought the little acre and a half behind the pond, nobody cared. It was just swampy land with an old fishing dock. The HOA struck a deal with him. They'd maintain the pond if the community could use the easement to cross his land for the walking trail and access to fish. That arrangement lasted peacefully for years, until Karen. Karen didn't start out as the villain. She was just another new homeowner back then, moving in from the city with her husband and 2 yappy Pomeranians. But somewhere along the way, she decided she didn't just want a house, she wanted control. She volunteered for the HOA board, then climbed her way to the presidency by promising order and property value protection. The older folks bought it. Families got stuck with her. Karen rewrote the rules to suit her whims. No RVs, no basketball hoops, no outdoor storage boxes unless approved. But her favorite thing was patrolling the neighborhood on her daily walks, clipboards in hand, her little dogs yipping at every fence and flower bed she judged unkempt. When she learned that Grandpa Joe's pond was technically on private land with an HOA easement, she hated it. "It shouldn't be up to him who fishes there," she often said at meetings. "It's our pond. We maintain it. He should be grateful." But Grandpa Joe never caused problems. He let the neighborhood kids fish. He never fussed when people walked through. He even mowed the trail himself half the time. To him, the pond was sacred, a piece of quiet country living that reminded him of his childhood. The confrontation by the pond. It was one of those mornings that felt like a gift: warm sun, a gentle breeze, birds chirping over the pond's glassy surface. Grandpa Joe baited Tim's hook with a fat worm while Tim asked him about the big fish he'd once caught as a boy. They were sitting on the old wooden dock Joe had rebuilt himself when they heard it, the high-pitched voice cutting through the calm like a rusty saw. "Excuse me. Excuse me." Karen stood at the edge of the path, arms crossed, dogs straining at their leashes. She wore her usual HOA uniform, tennis visor, windbreaker, and a badge clipped to her fanny pack that read, "Lakeview Estates HOA President." Tim tugged on Grandpa Joe's sleeve. "Grandpa, who's that lady?" Joe just sighed. "Just ignore her, Timmy. Cast your line." But Karen wasn't having it. She marched right up to the dock, her sneakers crunching the gravel. "You can't fish here," she snapped, jabbing a finger toward the water. "This is private proper." Epilogue expanded. Karen's empty house. The seasons changed. Summer turned the pond into a mirror for cotton candy sunsets, then fall broad crisp winds that rippled the surface and set the willows trembling. Through it all, Karen's old house stood silent. At first, a flurry of real estate agents came and went, each one swearing they could sell it at the original price. But buyers asked questions. Why is the easement blocked? Why is there a lawsuit lien on the HOA? Why does the whole neighborhood gossip about the pond? The once grand house with its oversized deck facing the water grew lonelier by the month. Paint flaked off the trim. The "for sale" sign leaned sideways. Rumors spread that Karen was renting a tiny apartment 2 towns over, too embarrassed to show her face. Some nights, kids dared each other to walk the path at dusk and peek at the darkened windows. They'd swear they saw her old Pomeranians scratching at the glass, ghost dogs guarding the ruins of her HOA empire. Joe never mocked her. He told Tim, "We don't celebrate someone's fall, kiddo. We just learn the lesson and do better." The community rebuilt a new HOA board, made up of actual neighbors instead of Karen's cronies, made quick work of fixing the mess. They sat down with Joe and Tim on that same dock and asked, "What's fair?" Joe said, "Keep your walking trail. You've got families who use it every day. Just promise it'll stay open for everybody. No more petty rules, no more harassment." They agreed. The new contract was simple: a 5-year renewable lease at a reasonable rate, no hidden fees, no surprise fines. They even put in a fishing line bin so kids could safely dispose of hooks. Local teens built birdhouses. The local Girl Scout troop planted wildflowers. The pond blossomed into a community spot again. Grandpa Joe's reflection. On the first anniversary of the pond showdown, Grandpa Joe sat at the end of his dock, feet dangling above the calm water. Tim sat next to him, scribbling in a sketchbook. "Grandpa," Tim said, tapping his pencil, "why did you let people use the pond all those years for free? Didn't you know they might take advantage?" Joe thought about that. The sun warmed his shoulders, the wind smelled of fresh grass and damp earth. "I did," he said. "But I also knew people are good more often than they're bad. One bad apple doesn't spoil the pond. Besides, what's a pond worth if it's just mine? It's better when it's ours." Tim grinned. "You're kinda like Robin Hood." Joe chuckled, lines crinkling at the corners of his eyes. "Maybe so. Except I didn't steal anything. I just took back what was always ours to begin with." The lesson passed on. Tim grew up telling that story at school, to his friends, even at college when he wrote his application essay about the pond that cost an HOA $2 million. He always included the line Grandpa Joe drilled into him: "Land is just dirt and water. It's the people who make it home." When Joe passed away, the community gathered by the pond for a sunset vigil. They floated candles on the water, each one reflecting off the glassy surface like a tiny star. The new sign at the dock read, "Joe's Pond, no fences. No fines. No Karens allowed. Kids still fish there every weekend. Families picnic under the willows. Some days, the old dock creaks under the weight of new grandpas, new grandkids, and stories passed down like well-loved fishing poles. And somewhere, in the quiet lapping of the pond's ripples, you can almost hear Grandpa Joe chuckle, a gentle reminder that sometimes the simplest traditions outlast the mightiest HOA rulebook. Final tagline. One Karen's call to the cops cost her the easement. But Grandpa Joe's kindness turned a neighborhood back into a family.